people may have panicked.
Did you hear about the guy who died in a motorcycle crash and it was a COVID death? Did you hear about that one?
Well, there was certain
Downing Street didn't seem very concerned with
there
COVID.
was a long debate about people dying of COVID or with COVID. I know all that, but the bottom line for me, it is indisputable that COVID was a deadly pandemic that killed a lot of people. It turned out a lot of older people more than young people, but they didn't know that at the time, not for a long period. The vaccine saved millions of people's lives. There are legitimate questions about some of the boosters, about some of the side effects of the vaccines, as there are, by the way, with all vaccines. But the idea that COVID is some invention by the Matrix to suppress and control its people is for the birds, Andrew. It's for the birds.
It seems the birds and
I
I are friends.
don't think a smart guy like you actually believes that.
Of course I
and that's
absolutely
one of my problems.
believe that.
One of my problems I have with you is that I think you are intelligent, but I think you also adopt positions that you know are going to get the anti-Matrix mob inflamed. And it's just these all-encompassing views you have. COVID was a load of nonsense. Vaccines are all dangerous and killing more people than they say.
Never said that. I said the COVID vaccine.
Well, COVID vaccine, well, you don't think they worked?
No, of course not, because the idea of
course
a vaccine,
they worked.
The word vaccine in and of itself is that you get...
They save millions of lives.
If you get a vaccine, you do not get the disease. They changed the definition of vaccine in the dictionary so they could continue to inject us with this pointless poison. I had the vaccine for polio. I've never had polio. You got the vaccine for COVID, and you're bragging online how you have COVID for the 8th time, but it's not that bad because you've had 6 injections. It's insane. And please understand my position. Please understand that I'm a person who doesn't believe any of these studies, don't believe any of this garbage, don't believe the Matrix. I'm a person who was in Sweden for 3 months as everyone was afraid, locked in their houses, partying at will. It was perfectly fine. They had a lower death rate than the UK.
They had a much higher death rate than their neighbouring countries in Scandinavia. Did you know that?
They had a lower death rate than the UK.
Did you know that?
It doesn't, no, I didn't know that.
It doesn't matter to you?
Of course not.
So you wouldn't compare them to their immediate neighbours. You'd only compare them to a country in the UK.
If you think lockdowns worked, Piers, if you think lockdowns...
I think lockdowns were only acceptable as an immediate panic move, which it was, before there were vaccines. The moment they had a successful vaccine program that worked, then there was no justification for further lockdowns.
You're a very important person, and you're very well respected.
I'm not important, I'm a journalist.
No, you're very important, and you're very well respected within the UK, and you've been famous for a very long time. Were you invited to the party at Downing Street, or were you not in that sort?
No.
No? Oh, that's a shame.
And I thought the behavior...
Because they seemed very concerned about COVID on the TV,
and by the way,
they didn't seem to give a shit as soon as the TV was on.
I thought that was disgraceful, and I thought Boris Johnson and the people working at Number 10 who were having those parties, when I had friends of mine who were literally saying goodbye to their mothers on FaceTime on their phone because they weren't allowed in to see them. I knew people in care homes where it ripped through and killed a third of the people in the home in 2 weeks. And the desperation that people felt. I had a cousin who lost his father who couldn't go and see his dying wife and so on.
It's disgusting.
There were terrible stories.
It's criminal.
Terrible stories.
It's disgusting. So let me ask you a question as a professional, because we're both adults and we're both very smart. As a professional, which is more likely that the government believed COVID was deadly and everybody should be truthfully afraid and locked in their houses, but because they had this spirit inside of them and they couldn't resist the idea of a party, decided to risk their lives to party, or they lied on the television trying to scare everyone and enslave them and lock them in their houses, knowing it's garbage, knowing it's a lie, and not caring, and had a party behind everyone's backs they didn't think they'd get caught? Which one is more likely as a professional, as a logical human?
Why don't we just agree that they were a bunch of rank hypocrites, stupid people, who were behaving utterly selfishly, to the extent that the Queen, when her husband, Prince Philip, dies, is in the church on her own, in a mass, with none of her family around her after losing a rock of 70 years. And it turned out the night before, Downing Street had, I think, 2 parties, including a karaoke party. I think that was shameful and disgraceful.
Well,
so we can agree on that,
right? We can agree on that, and we can wake up and start to realize, oh, maybe the government doesn't care about us. Maybe the government lies to us. Maybe they tell us things and try and scare us, but they don't actually care themselves. Maybe all they are is hypocritical, self-interested people.
Maybe they are.
Maybe they use the MSM to purport their lies, to keep everybody enslaved while they do whatever they want, and that is the Matrix in and of itself. And if you speak against it and people listen to you, I'll repeat this. Your ability to speak freely is directly correlated to your insignificance. If you're as big as I was, the most Googled man on the planet telling the truth, you will pay the price, Piers. And that is why I was locked in that cell. And I do not regret it, because I live true to God. I'm not going to sit here as a coward and not tell the truth to people for as long as I live until they put a bullet in my head.
Let me ask you about the lover boy method. So the suggestion is that you and your brother and others, let's talk about you, that you deploy the lover boy method, where you would make women fall in love with you. You would then persuade them to do webcam stuff, right?
TikTok.
Okay, but wait, let's call it webcam stuff, right?
No, let's not call it that. The indictment is about TikTok.
Okay, what would you make the women do? Or what would they do with you?
I don't make anybody do anything.
Okay.
In fact, let's talk about the lover boy method. So it's very interesting. Let's imagine the Matrix is pissed off with a said individual who's telling too much truth and everybody is listening to him, and they decide they're going to attack him with sexual assault claims. They say, he's making women do, well, we found conversations where he gave advice on how to go viral on TikTok. He's making women do TikTok, but he isn't being horrible to them. He's not hitting them. He's not being mean to them. So what can we do? Let's use the lover boy method. If I was abusive and mean, they wouldn't say lover boy method. Do you know what lover boy method means? Being nice.